evening, everyone. What a pleasure it is to be here. My name is Mike Smith. I'm the Chief Executive of Randstad Enterprise, and I have the pleasure of hosting this fantastic panel this afternoon. As a little bit of a personal story on myself, my beautiful wife, Lindsay, is also made by dyslexia. So we just saw this incredible video about LinkedIn and Made by Dyslexia creating this campaign which led to dyslexic thinking being added as a skill on the LinkedIn platform, not to mention being added into the dictionary. Nicole, let's start with you. Why was this campaign so successful?
I think it was successful because we were able to shift from outdated stigmas to instead focus on the really real skills that people with dyslexia bring to the workforce: communication, reasoning. We were also able to give people the ability to take action, to take back their dyslexia as a skill. And we saw incredible results. In the first 2 weeks of the campaign, more than 10,000 people added dyslexic thinking as a skill on LinkedIn. But it's not stopped. We're seeing on average every month, 1,000 more people added as a skill, and it's still going. We're also seeing the importance of really prominent voices like Richard Branson talking openly about dyslexia. And really, I think it comes down to people are hungry for a change and a reframe around this really important conversation.
Excellent. Let's stick with the theme of skills for a minute, because Matt, you have exposure to some of the world's largest customers from a recruiting perspective.
Yeah.
And a lot of them opine about the skills gap that they still face in the workforce at the moment. How can this emergence of dyslexic skills help close some of that skills gap that we hear about so often?
Well, I think it's a great question. I think we've heard before the interval from the education sector around how important specific skills are around dyslexia. I think you're seeing reports coming from the World Economic Forum, EY, and other organizations that really focus around the expertise dyslexic thinkers have around creativity, analytical thinking, leadership, social influence, those sorts of things. Dyslexic thinkers are exceptional at that. But as we sit here today, the average organization believes, so 60, 70% of most organizations believe they do a fantastic job bringing in dyslexic thinkers. You ask that question to dyslexic thinkers, that number's 14%. So clearly we have a skills gap and we have a problem, because if we're genuinely going to close that gap, we need to work better with dyslexic thinkers.
So lots of good work going on, but still gaps to close.
Most definitely. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned there about EY. We have Hank here from EY. Hank, we've heard a lot about making sure that we're being very intentional and thoughtful about education, particularly in the idea of making sure those pipelines are flourishing for dyslexic talent in the future. How are EY thinking about that?
Yeah, so I think before we get to the how, I kind of want to start with the why, right? As Simon Sinek taught us, always start with the why. And our why at EY is building a better working world. And you think about what are we talking about in this World Dyslexia Summit is how does dyslexic thinking drive building a better working world? So we referenced the World Economic Forum and the study. And you think about, we talked about AI in the last panel. We're coming out of a pandemic. We're talking about digital disruption, all these incredible changes and opportunities. And when we look at the skills, we just recognize we need the most inclusive teams to drive that. We create the best solutions for our clients when we bring and put together the highest performing team. So we really started that. We think about the skill sets that dyslexic thinking we talked about. Exploring, imagining, connecting, all those superhuman strengths. So it's really starting with that why, and then we really focused on the how. When we think about the how, we want to drive it, some real lessons on leadership at the top, driving those learnings throughout those organizations, using the power of storytelling throughout the organization to share people's experiences. And that, fostering that environment has made it an attractive place to bring in skill sets of all different types, including dyslexic thinking, and empowering that in, and super LinkedIn, and helping us attract that talent. But as importantly, making sure we can retain that talent so they feel like they're really bringing their whole self to work and having that environment. So it's really connecting that why all the way in through the how.
Excellent. The idea of the plethora of dyslexic skills must be attractive, but we know that the ability to be able to continue to have recruitment processes that actually screen them in is something that still needs work. Laura, I know at HSBC this is something that you've been incredibly passionate about championing. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we hired nearly 70,000 people last year, so the numbers are pretty huge. And I think building on Hank's point, for us it's really important to build an inclusive organization and for people to feel able to be themselves at work. So one of the most important things is for people to feel that they can disclose that they're dyslexic, and that's something that we've talked a lot about internally in terms of building awareness so that people feel proud to tell us that they're dyslexic, and that, you know, we as an employer will see it as a superpower and not something that they should be thinking about hiding from us. So that sort of disclosure is really important. I think the other bit that I would also sort of flag is we've been working really hard on the sort of candidate care experience and making sure that people are supported with the right level of adjustments in any types of processes that we're doing. So that's another big area of focus. I would say also just around processes, so thinking about role descriptions and also about the assessments that we use and making sure that they're really fair and inclusive again. And then the final thing I'm quite excited about, so over the last year we've started to actually trial and put in place some pilots of actual targeted campaigns for neurodiverse and dyslexic candidates. So we're doing that in several markets around the world.
Excellent. I feel that's a great segue to go to Jenny, because Jenny, I know that at Microsoft you've also been specifically focusing on targeting and attracting and hiring dyslexic and neurodiverse talent. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Absolutely. So it's not just important that we have disabled talent at a company like Microsoft. In fact, all of us, we urgently need it. If we're going to create inclusive and accessible technology, I am a nerd. I'm a very proud nerd. I love it. But we got to have people with disabilities, people who are neurodiverse, which includes dyslexia. Neurodiversity is that umbrella term that includes autism, ADD, dyspraxia, and dyslexia. If we have people in the core and the fabric of our company, we are quite simply going to create better nerdery. And we need that technology, right? So, game on. I can't hear you, but game on. I do think some of what we've already has come out of Microsoft. In 2017, we launched the Immersive Reader. That was designed by dyslexics at Microsoft. And then you look at what we have with this new generation of GPT and AI coming through. If we have people who are dyslexic, you're going to get tools that are quite simply better for you. So yes, we proactively hire through a neurodiversity hiring gig. We don't care if you can't spell. That's what spell check's for. We want you to come as you are. And we want you to really put in that application.
Excellent answer. Nicole, I feel like I should come back to you, because before this panel you said that spell check saved my life in the early couple of years of my career. And you've worked at some of the most illustrious large tech companies in the world. Can you tell us a little bit about how your dyslexic skills enabled you to be successful in that career so far?
Well, quite simply, I would not have the job I have, the career I've been lucky enough to have, if Microsoft Word and spell check didn't exist. But it wouldn't have happened. And that's an incredible gift that I feel like I got early in my career, but I'd be lying if I didn't acknowledge it was really hard early on. I'd make mistakes. I still make mistakes. I'd spell things wrong in email, and I've been taken harshly to task over it. But getting past that first few years, I started to be able to see some of the advantages of being dyslexic. I'm a very creative problem solver. I'm able to look at things from all sorts of different perspectives, and that's a gift. It's a skill that I have because I am dyslexic. And I think in this moment that we're in, where with advances in AI and all these incredible technology developments, we're all going to have to learn how to learn again, and dyslexics have a real advantage in this moment.
We heard a little bit about AI on the previous panel, and I feel we should come back to Jenny on that, and I can see you're excited to say something about it. We've seen Microsoft recently launch Copilot to much fanfare. Is generative AI a success enabler for those with dyslexia?
Yes.
Next.
Yeah, but in all seriousness, generative AI, which is this incredible new technology coming through, and we're very proud to work with OpenAI to really help infuse some of it. But what is it? It is basically taking what it can from enormous libraries of data and bringing that into very simplistic forms. So go to Bing. Now, I love Bing. I worked on Bing many years ago. It's a really good search engine. Just ignore that Google thing for a minute. Go to Bing. But others do exist. I acknowledge that. But you can go to them and you can ask the questions that you need to, the prompts that you need to in your next research. So I was researching, hey, where should I stay in New York if I'm going to be speaking at the Lincoln Center? Where should I go eat with Isn't Juniors? And you can go and figure out these very complex questions and get that information back. It is then for you to work in a co-pilot way. You own that. It's not writing it for you. It's giving you what you need to then generate the right answers that you need in return. It is a complete and utter time-saving, productive machine.
Sounds very exciting.
It is.
When we think a little bit about actually putting to use the dyslexic skills that already exist in our organization, Hank, let's start with you. How are you concretely going about that at the moment?
Yeah, we talked a lot about those skills. And before I get to the positive, I think 70% of dyslexics hide that from their workforce today. So think about that. We talk a lot in the disability space about the cost of covering, all that lost value that it's not being captured by firms like myself. When we look at that, I think about it in a leadership model. I think it was Tim Kite who said leadership is about creating a clear, compelling vision of the future. We talked a lot about that, where that is. Creating an alignment and removing obstacles. So in the alignment space, we really look at thinking about how do we help people staff our projects? How can people resourcing, skills mapping, when we talk about putting together a team, we want to make sure it has the most diverse set of skills, because we know the most inclusive team is always going to outperform. So really thinking about that and really customizing that experience. When we think about also bringing that culture of belonging, that whole self of work, so how do we support that? How do we allow people to develop those experiences, opt in on the projects we want? We talked a lot about role models and a little bit of the storytelling. My son Luke is in the audience here today. He is clearly made by dyslexia and thriving in the New York City environment. His role model was Sir Richard Branson. Throughout his workforce, his career, he wrote papers on Richard, had that expiring up to. He also played high school football against Rashawn Gary, so we had a little bit of connections in the audience today. I think also when we talk about removing obstacles, we're really focusing on removing obstacles in the area of recruiting. We're doing a lot of work with different universities, really driving a connection between the education environment, universities in our case, when we're in the employee environment, and what are those obstacles. So get away from standardized testing. Just because someone spelt the word wrong does not mean we need all the skills. Really kind of driving that area. And I think it was Jenny or someone mentioned, we're really looking at what learnings we're getting from our broadest set of neurodiverse communities.
Interesting. Laura, what about HSBC? What are you doing in this area?
So there's lots of things happening, but probably one thing that I would particularly focus on today, and it picks up on the power of what LinkedIn did last year. But a couple of years ago, we put in place some software called Talent Marketplace, and it was really there to solve the challenge that Matt spoke to, that the world is changing, skills are changing fast, and many people, as we know, need to reskill. So we put in this AI-driven technology Talent Marketplace with a company called Gloat. And actually, post the LinkedIn campaign last year, we spoke with their CEO over the last few months and said, we really want to drive like an understanding of dyslexic talent at HSBC. So they've now enabled dyslexic thinking as a skill on the talent marketplace as well, which I'm really excited about. It's great, great news. And, you know, this is a software that's used by many, many leading companies around the world. So I think, you know, HSBC has been there at the start, but this is a real opportunity for employers around the world, to a new era, to really unleash dyslexic talent in their organizations. So very exciting.
Sounds like a tremendous step in the right direction. Speaking of steps in the next direction, Matt, let's come to you. Tomorrow, a large group of senior business leaders are going to be graciously hosted at LinkedIn to talk about how we take the next steps and the great momentum that's been created today into reality moving forward. If you could think of kind of a wish that comes from that, what would you like to see?
I think one of the things for me personally is I sort of look out in the audience, and there's a lot of parents here with young children. So my son Thomas is 12, dyslexic, and I've spent a lot of time working out what can I do in the job that I do to help him, but also other people with young children. And I think there's 2 or 3 key things that we're going to work on tomorrow that you'll see coming over the next few months and years that will benefit everybody in the room and everybody around the world. And I think firstly it's defining dyslexia as a valuable skill. So you have children in the audience, your children will get the jobs of the future. And that, to me, is hugely powerful. So we will take that away and we will bring that to you. The second is talk to organizations. I'd say talk to organizations and offer adjustments. I think dyslexic thinking needs adjustments. Tailor the recruitment process like Laura's talked about. Start affinity groups, but most importantly, be really proud that you're dyslexic in the workplace, because I certainly am, and I know my son is, and you should all be. So.
Nicole and Jenny, we have time for one last question quickly. Anything to add to Matt's response? What would you like to see happen next?
More people get more comfortable with talking about the advantages of being dyslexic. I hid it for most of my career. Why are you going to trust a communications person that can't spell? My 12-year-old is dyslexic, and she'll trip over something and say, hey, it's because I'm dyslexic. That's how open and comfortable she is with who she is. So the more we can embrace this is a skill, the more we can create space to see that there's different approaches to solving problems. And I think in the professional realm, the more that people can add this as a skill on LinkedIn and have these types of important conversations, the bigger a difference we can all make.
And I would just say there's a beautiful phrase which is come as you are and do as you love. I'm a very proud deaf disabled woman. I came to Microsoft 18 years ago. I did not self-identify. What was I thinking? What? I would say the same back to you. Dyslexia is a skill, it is a strength, it is a talent pool, and we desperately need you. So come as you are and do what you love, which hopefully is tech.
Please thank our fantastic panel.